A veteran cop stood on trial for assaulting a young black man, but when she suddenly pointed a gun at the judge mid-testimony, the entire courtroom held its breath, and what he said in response changed everything. St. Charles, Missouri, a town people used to call quiet, though that word lost its meaning a long time ago. By 8:10 a.m., the hallway outside courtroom 4B was packed, not with tourists, not with media alone, but with people who lived here, people who watched the video, people who knew the faces in it, people who whispered to each other in broken fragments. Did you hear she still pleaded not guilty? That judge, he's not going to play. You saw the clip, right? She slammed him to the ground for a license plate light. Inside the courtroom, a single camera lens sat fixed, capturing it all. Not for a movie, not for a series. For a hearing the entire state now couldn't stop watching. The bailiff called order, and there she was. Officer Karen Dufresne entered in a sharp navy suit, her badge still gleaming on her belt, though she wasn't supposed to wear it in court. She walked with squared shoulders, chin forward, eyes scanning. Her expression was unreadable, controlled, rigid. Not a flicker of regret. Not a hint of humility. She didn't look at the gallery. She looked at the judge, Raynard Ellison, a 57-year-old man who didn't blink as she entered. Dark grey suit, wedding ring, a face full of quiet history and things he didn't have to explain out loud. He looked up from his bench, gave a single nod of acknowledgement, and returned to the file before him. But his eyes, they stayed steady, not cold, just unmoved. This wasn't just another hearing. Everyone felt it. There was something tight in the room's air. You couldn't see it, but you could feel it. A mix of anger, sorrow, and anticipation that clung to the walls. The case? A traffic stop. August 7th, Interstate 70. A black college student named Tyree Jenkins pulled over for a non-functioning tail light. Within 6 minutes, he was face down on hot asphalt, with a knee in his back and blood on his lip. He kept asking, "What did I do?" And she kept saying, "Stop resisting." Bodycam footage told the rest. Or at least most of it. Tyree never fought, never raised his voice, never tried to run. He sat there and bled as Dufresne radioed for backup. The video went viral in 36 hours. People saw it, and they didn't argue over it. They saw it and said, "No, not this time." Still, Dufresne pleaded not guilty. Said she followed protocol. Claimed the kid was aggressive. Said he reached for something, though the footage never showed it. Said her training kicked in. Her lawyers filed motions to suppress the footage, claiming emotional bias. The judge denied every one. And now, here they were. "You may be seated," Judge Ellison said. Voices died down, chairs creaked, papers shuffled. The prosecutor, Delaney Ford, stood, a woman in her early 50s with tightly pulled back hair and a quiet fire behind her tone. "Your Honor, the people are ready to proceed." Defense followed. "The defense is ready, Your Honor." The opening statements weren't fireworks. They didn't need to be. They were the kind that made people fidget, whisper under their breath, clench fists in their laps. "This case is not about race," Dufresne's attorney said at one point. "It's about perception, situational response, and law enforcement's duty to act under threat." Judge Ellison raised his eyes briefly. "Be careful," he said, quiet but direct. "Let's not insult the intelligence of this room." A few heads turned. Even Dufresne looked up. Ford spoke next. "You'll hear from witnesses. You'll see the footage again. You'll hear from Mr. Jenkins himself. And at the end of it all, you'll ask yourself not just what she did, but why she did it." She paused, and who she saw when she looked at him. But the tension in that courtroom hadn't even begun to peak yet. That would come when Dufresne took the stand. Before the footage, before the courtroom, before Tyree Jenkins even stepped out of his car that afternoon, Karen Dufresne was a name people respected. Not everyone, of course, but enough. She joined the St. Charles Police Department in 2006. Started on foot patrol, moved up to traffic enforcement, then specialized units. Her file was thick with commendations: quick reflexes during a bank robbery call, CPR on a highway crash victim, a drug bust that made local news. She had that reputation of being by the book, even when that book got heavy. But what didn't make the record were the complaints. A pattern. Quiet, brushed aside, unresolved. 3 excessive force claims in the last 5 years. 2 from young black men, 1 from a Latino teenager who said she called him trash before slamming him into a squad car. None of it stuck. Dashcams were inconclusive. Supervisors wrote vague summaries. Tactical intervention deemed appropriate. No sustained violation. Officer responded within departmental standards. But you'd hear things if you worked nearby, if you sat in break rooms or coffee shops or locker rooms. Karen's got a short fuse. She don't like attitude. She's not scared to lay hands. She don't take no lip, especially not from those ones. Those ones. It was never said loud enough to stick. But you felt it in how people said it. The smirks, the side glances, the code. August 7th started like any other shift. She clocked in, checked her squad car, and logged into her onboard computer. She took 2 calls before noon, a stolen package report, and a welfare check on a 911 hang-up. Then came the alert. Black male, late teens, out-of-state plates, tail light out. She said she wasn't profiling, said it was random. But when the dispatcher pulled up the dashcam audio later, the first thing she said after reading the plate wasn't protocol. It was, of course. That part wasn't included in the bodycam footage the public saw, but it came out later in Discovery. And it wasn't a good look. At 2:47 p.m., her dashcam showed her cruiser pulling behind a silver Honda Accord on the shoulder of I-70. 2 lanes of traffic whizzing by. She approached the car with her right hand on her holster. Tyree Jenkins, age 21, business major at Lindenwood University, headed home after visiting his mom in Florissant. He had a textbook in the passenger seat and a lemon Gatorade between his knees. She tapped the window. He rolled it down. "What's the problem, officer?" "License and registration." "It's right here. Did I do something wrong?" "Your tail light's out." Really? I didn't know. I can fix that." "You step out of the vehicle for me?" Tyree hesitated. "Why?" "It's standard." She reached for the door. He pulled it closed. "I didn't do anything." What happened next was fast. She yanked the door open. He said, "Wait, hold on." She grabbed his wrist. He said, "Please don't." She pulled him out, twisted his arm, forced him down, cuffed him hard, all while repeating, "Stop resisting," even though he didn't. Then she radioed in, like it was another Tuesday. When the footage hit social media, it wasn't just students or activists reacting. Grandmothers, veterans, a local librarian, her own former high school English teacher. People couldn't defend it. There was nothing to hide behind. But instead of resigning, Dufresne doubled down, hired a defense team, released a statement. "I acted within my rights and within the law." She said she feared for her safety. She said she thought he might have had a weapon. There was no weapon, only that Gatorade bottle, now with a crack in the plastic from where it rolled across the pavement. Tyree ended up with bruised ribs, a sprained wrist, and something worse. Shame. He stopped going to class for a while. Said he didn't know how to walk through campus without people looking at him like he was part of a tragedy. He said it made him feel small, even though he did nothing wrong. He agreed to testify. Said if he didn't, then what was the point of all this? But when he walked into the courtroom, he didn't know that the woman who hurt him would bring something more dangerous than excuses. The witness stand didn't look like much, just polished wood and a microphone that wobbled slightly when bumped. But when Tyree Jenkins sat there, the room shifted. He wore a white button-down. No tie. His hands rested in his lap, fingers clenched together like he was trying not to fidget. But his eyes, those told you everything. Judge Ellison gave him a nod, the kind that said, "Take your time. You're not alone here." Delaney Ford, the prosecutor, approached carefully. No showmanship, no tricks, just a folder in her hands and a voice steady enough to carry across the room without echo. "Mr. Jenkins," she began, "can you tell the court what happened on August 7th in your own words?" Tyree swallowed. "I was driving back from my mum's house. Just got on the highway. I wasn't speeding. I wasn't swerving. I didn't think anything was wrong until I saw the lights behind me." He paused, glanced briefly toward Dufresne. "She said my tail light was out. I didn't know. I tried to cooperate. I gave her my license. I asked why she needed me to get out. She didn't answer, just told me it was standard. But I didn't feel safe, so I asked again. And what happened next? She opened the door, grabbed me. I tried to hold on to the steering wheel. I wasn't fighting. I was scared. She pulled me out, slammed me on the ground, cuffed me. My face hit the road." Ford nodded gently. "Did you ever threaten her?" "No." "Did you ever reach for a weapon?" "I didn't have one. I had a Gatorade. That's it." Ford walked to the evidence table, pressed a button. The screen behind the judge lit up. A still frame from the body cam footage appeared. Tyree, flat on the pavement, blood under his nose, hands behind his back, Dufresne's knee pinning him down. The courtroom went quiet. "Was that how you spent the rest of the stop?" "Yeah. Until backup came." "And how long were you on the ground?" 3, maybe 4 minutes. "Felt longer." Ford turned off the screen. "Thank you." Then the defense stepped forward. A tall man named Roland Hensley. Expensive suit. Smug tone. "Mr. Jenkins, do you recall how you reacted when Officer Dufresne asked you to step out of the vehicle?" "I asked why. You refused, correct?" "I was confused. I didn't understand it, but you didn't comply." "That's fair to say." I was scared." "So you resisted?" "No, I didn't fight. I didn't—" "You resisted her command, did you not?" Judge Ellison raised a hand. "Counselor, be precise. Ask, don't corner." Hensley shifted. "Mr. Jenkins, do you think it's possible Officer Dufresne perceived your actions as threatening?" "No, I didn't yell. I didn't move fast. I kept asking questions, that's all." Hensley tried another angle. "Are you aware of how often officers face sudden violence during traffic stops?" "I've read about it. But I'm not a threat just because I'm stopped." "You were nervous, were you not?" "Of course I was nervous. And sometimes nervousness can look like—" Tyree leaned forward, voice firmer. "I was scared. Not dangerous. There's a difference." You could feel the air tighten again. Tyree's mum was sitting in the back row, tears in her eyes. She clutched her purse like it could protect her from the moment. The defense finished their questions. Tyree stepped down. But what stuck with people wasn't just his testimony. It was how much weight he carried walking back to his seat. Like he'd been holding something no one should ever have to hold alone. Later, a paramedic who examined Tyree after the arrest testified. She said he kept repeating one thing over and over, even while she checked his ribs. "I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything." That silence returned. But the courtroom didn't know, wouldn't know, just how tightly Officer Dufresne's world was about to crack until she sat down in that same seat. When Karen Dufresne took the stand, it wasn't her voice people noticed first. It was the way her fingers trembled as she adjusted the microphone. Small movement, barely visible, but it was there. She still wore that stiff, unreadable expression, like a person trying to keep glass from shattering just by holding it tighter. Her lawyer stood close. "Officer Dufresne, how long have you served in law enforcement?" 19 years. "And in that time, have you ever discharged your weapon during a traffic stop?" "No." "Have you ever been injured in the line of duty?" "Yes, twice." "Tell us about the second time." She straightened a little. 4 years ago, domestic call in a trailer park. Man with a knife. I was the first on scene. He came at me. I didn't draw, just disarmed him. But I tore something in my shoulder. There were nods from a few jurors, a flicker of sympathy. The story had weight, but sympathy is fragile. And the next line brought the mood right back to center. "Let's talk about August 7th. Her jaw shifted. A blink. "I was driving eastbound on I-70, ran a plate for a minor equipment issue. Tail light. Standard check. Came back clean, but I saw the driver hesitate when I pulled behind him. That got my attention. Did you feel threatened? Not at first, but his behavior escalated. How? He asked a lot of questions. Stalled. Wouldn't step out of the car. Ford stood, objected. Requesting clarification isn't escalation. Judge Ellison waved his hand. Sustained. Move on. Hensley continued. What made you initiate physical contact? He refused to exit. I opened the door. He pulled it back. That's resistance. Ford stood again. Physical resistance? Dufresne's pause was just long enough. No, but it was defiance. Judge Ellison leaned forward. Miss Dufresne, words matter in this courtroom. We are not on the street anymore. She didn't respond. The footage played again. This time, the audio was slowed. Clear. Her voice saying, "Stop resisting," even as Tyree lay still, coughing. Her hand pressing the back of his head. His Gatorade bottle rolling onto the highway shoulder. Hensley shifted in front of the jury. Officer Dufresne, in your professional opinion, did you act within proper protocol? I believed I did. Ford stood. Belief and reality are different things. You believed he was a threat. He wasn't. You believed he resisted. The footage says he didn't. At what point do your beliefs stop justifying violence? Objection. Overruled. Ford stepped closer. Did you ever ask yourself what you saw when you looked at Tyree? Dufresne's throat tightened. I saw someone stalling. Did you see a young man? A student? Someone scared? Silence. Ford turned to the jury. Or did you see someone you already made your mind up about before you touched his car door? The room held still. Dufresne exhaled, slow. I did what I was trained to do. Then your training is broken. Objection. Sustained. But that line stuck in the air. Then came a pause in questioning. A break in rhythm. The kind that usually gives the witness room to breathe. Dufresne didn't breathe. She fidgeted with her sleeve. Eyes shifted slightly toward the gallery. Her gaze landed briefly on a woman in the second row. It was her former partner, now retired. The same woman who submitted a quiet statement weeks ago, never made public, but read by the judge. The one that said, "She didn't used to be like this, but something changed after that 2019 shooting review. She started seeing enemies instead of people." Dufresne's jaw clenched. Then, unexpectedly, she spoke again. Unprompted. "You all want to crucify me, but you weren't there." Judge Ellison held up a hand. "Ms. Dufresne, answer only what's asked." She looked right at him now. Directly. No filter left. I've pulled over more kids like him than I can count. Always nervous. Always reaching for something. I don't have time to guess if it's a gun or a snack. The gallery stirred. Judge Ellison leaned forward, his voice low but firm. "You do have time. You're sworn to." She opened her mouth, but her breathing quickened. Her eyes twitched. Her left hand dropped to her lap, and didn't come back up. But no one, not even her own attorney, expected what she was reaching for. There's a moment in every courtroom where time stutters. Not stops, just hesitates, like the world is deciding which way to tip. That moment came the second Karen Dufresne's hand rose from her lap, holding a black Sig Sauer pistol. She didn't shout. She didn't stand. She didn't even blink. She just pointed the gun, steadily, without trembling, at Judge Reynard Ellison. The room froze. One bailiff reached for his own sidearm, but didn't draw. Too many people. Too close. Too fast. Another instinctively stepped in front of the nearest juror. A woman in the gallery screamed. Judge Ellison didn't move. He didn't duck. Didn't flinch. He looked at her. Just looked. And said, "You don't want to do that." Her breathing was uneven now, lips trembling. But her hand didn't waver. "You think you know me," she said, voice tight. "You don't know what it's like out there. You sit up here in your robe and judge me? I had seconds to make a call." "I'm not judging your job," Ellison replied calmly. "I'm judging your choices, this one included." Her eyes flashed. You all came in here with your minds made up. The video, the kid crying on the stand. None of you care what it's like being the one who has to make the decision when a hand moves the wrong way. Your job was never about reacting, Ellison said. It was about protecting. Even when it's hard. Even when you're scared. You ever been scared in your car at night with no backup coming? She hissed. I've been scared sitting on my own front porch, wondering if I'll live to see morning. That hit her. You could see it. Something cracked behind her eyes. Put the gun down, he said. No, she whispered. You want to be heard. I hear you. But this makes you a criminal. It undoes every badge you ever wore. Tears slipped down her cheeks now. She wasn't sobbing, just leaking, like something was breaking from inside and couldn't be stopped anymore. I gave 20 years to this department, she said. And now I'm the villain. No, Ellison said. You were the villain the moment you stopped seeing people. That was your choice, not the badges. Yours. Silence. Not a cough. Not a whisper. Just her finger, still resting on the trigger, her eyes darting. Judge, jury, crowd, camera. Everyone watching. Karen, came a voice from behind. Her former partner, the woman from the gallery. You're not fixing anything with that. You're just proving the kid right. Karen's hand shook for the first time. Put it down, the woman repeated. Don't let that be your last moment. Then Ellison spoke again, quieter this time. This isn't about how it ends. It's about who you let yourself become. A long breath escaped her lips. And then, finally, her arm dropped, slowly. The gun hovered near her lap. Bailiffs moved, but slowly. One took the weapon, another took her wrist. No yelling, no slamming. Just quiet steps, practiced hands, and a woman who no longer resisted anything. She didn't speak as they cuffed her. She didn't struggle. She just stared at Ellison. One last time. He returned the gaze. Not with anger, not with pride. Just a sorrow so still it settled over the room like dust. But in the silence that followed, the courtroom wasn't thinking about the gun anymore. They were thinking about the mirror she just held up to the whole system. 15 seconds. That's how long the gun was pointed. 15 seconds that unraveled everything people thought they understood about control, authority, and fear. When the bailiffs escorted Karen Dufresne out of the courtroom, no one cheered, no one clapped. They just watched, still frozen, still silent. Not because justice had been served, but because justice had just been threatened, live, in front of them all. Judge Ellison sat still for a few moments. His hands rested on the bench, his breathing slow and even. Then, without looking at anyone, he reached for the gavel. Not to adjourn, just to ground himself. Then he looked up, to those present, he said, voice hoarse. There will be a recess. 15 minutes. No one leaves. Bailiffs, secure the exits. I'll return shortly. He stood and walked out the side door. But those 15 minutes weren't quiet. People whispered now, nervously, rapidly, like they couldn't keep the shock inside their skin. Tyree Jenkins sat with his hands over his mouth. His mother held on to his knee like it was the only thing tethering her to the moment. Across the aisle, reporters scribbled in notepads with shaking hands. The stenographer wiped tears from her keyboard. Ford, the prosecutor, stepped outside with her assistant and paced the hallway in slow, measured circles. Dufresne's attorney sat alone. Still, hands clasped, staring at the floor, his whole posture saying, I never saw it coming. But behind the courtroom wall, in a small chamber, Judge Ellison sat on a wooden bench, elbows on his knees, face buried in his hands. He wasn't crying, but he was breathing hard. The kind of breathing that comes when something ancient inside you gets shaken loose. Something old and buried and full of scar tissue. His clerk knocked lightly and stepped in. Judge, you all right? Ellison looked up slowly. His eyes were wet but focused. I'm fine. You sure? No, he admitted. But I'll be back. He stood, buttoned his jacket, and walked back into the room. Everyone stood when he returned, though some did it slowly, like their knees weren't ready yet. He sat down, adjusted his glasses, and leaned slightly toward the mic. Today has been... He stopped, reconsidered. What just happened is not only a breach of this court's security, it's a window into something deeper. His voice was steady now. We just watched someone trained to serve and protect hold a firearm on the bench because she felt cornered, because she believed in that moment that her fear was bigger than the law. He looked around the room, locking eyes with jurors, with Tyree, with Dufresne's lawyer. That is exactly the fear people like Mr. Jenkins live with every day. The difference is they don't get to carry a badge or a gun while feeling it. Silence. He continued, slower now. Let today be a moment of reckoning. Not just for this case, but for the culture that allows fear to justify harm. That trains officers to react faster than they listen. That teaches courts to dismiss lives before they hear them. Then he paused. Let it breathe. I will not declare a mistrial. I will not silence the testimony we've already heard. The jury will return tomorrow, and this court will resume. He stood. Because justice doesn't flinch, even when it's stared down by a loaded weapon. With that, he turned and walked out, and still, no one clapped. No one moved fast. They just sat there, letting the weight of what happened settle into the corners of their minds. 15 seconds. Not long enough to blink twice, but long enough to see everything that's been broken for years. But outside the courthouse, the story wasn't over. It was only now reaching the rest of the world. By the next morning, the footage had already made national news. Not the body cam, not the traffic stop, the courtroom. Grainy, angled video from a reporter's phone showed Officer Karen Dufresne calmly raising a pistol toward Judge Reynard Ellison while a jury sat stunned just feet away. It played on every screen in every airport, bar, and living room, from Fresno to Pittsburgh. Headlines were blunt. Officer snaps in court. Points gun at black judge. Trial chaos in Missouri. Cop turns accuser. Justice under fire. Literally. But the footage didn't tell the whole story. Not the way it was lived. That part came through in the faces of the people who had been in the room. Their words, their silence. Tyree Jenkinson's refused interviews. His lawyer said he needed time. He didn't go back to campus that week, or the week after. He stayed at his mother's, mostly on the couch, phone off, TV unplugged. He said he couldn't make sense of how someone could hurt you, lie about it, and then aim a gun at the judge for saying the truth out loud. But eventually, he wrote something down. 4 sentences he handed to his lawyer, who read it quietly at a press briefing. I didn't want to be part of something big. I just wanted to be seen for who I am. That courtroom showed me how broken things are, but it also showed me there are people still fighting to fix them. Judge Ellison received threats after that day. His staff filtered them. Some handwritten, some online. None serious enough to warrant security changes, but enough to remind him that the robe he wore didn't shield him from the world outside. Still, he returned to the bench every day that week. On Friday, he walked into a high school gymnasium on his lunch break and gave a talk, already scheduled long before the trial. The topic was supposed to be civic responsibility. He didn't use notes. I stood still while someone pointed a gun at me, he said to a group of juniors and seniors. Because I knew what would happen if I didn't. He looked around. But what shook me most wasn't the gun. It was the look in her eyes. That look of being certain she had no other option. And the scary part is, she believed that. He let that sit. So if you want to be responsible citizens, don't start by quoting laws. Start by unlearning what makes you assume the worst in someone who doesn't look like you. Back in the courtroom, the trial continued. Briefly. After Dufresne was arrested, the case unraveled. Her lawyers filed for mental health evaluations. The defense collapsed. Prosecutors dropped the trial and filed new charges: aggravated assault, weapons violations, obstruction of justice. She was denied bail, held in a facility 2 counties over. But the conversation she forced open didn't stop there. At City Hall meetings, people showed up, not just with protest signs, but with questions. Real ones. How many use-of-force complaints had been quietly buried? Why wasn't there mandatory psychological screening every 5 years for officers? How did someone like Dufresne make it 19 years without mandatory de-escalation retraining? Change came slow, but it came. The police chief resigned 2 months later. The city council approved a budget for body cams that couldn't be shut off manually. A civilian oversight committee, once laughed off, was suddenly a real thing, with real teeth. And Tyree? He went back to school eventually, quietly. No press, no attention. He changed his major, switched from business to social work, said it felt like the right thing to do now. Justice doesn't always look like a verdict. Sometimes it looks like a gun being lowered, a judge who refuses to duck, a kid who doesn't stop speaking, a crowd that doesn't let the moment die after the cameras leave. Because justice isn't one thing. It's a choice, made over and over, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. If you found meaning in this story, share it, talk about it, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that matter.